Today is Thursday, March 26th. I'm going to try and do a synopsis with extremely limited notes today on the main story from the Rachel Maddow Show, the Lawrence O'Donnell Show, and my good friend, the Billy O'Reilly Show. So let's go into the main part of it is what's going on in Yemen right now. And from a military standpoint, Yemen is south of Saudi Arabia. It's part of the Arabian Peninsula. We have been hearing about a fair amount of civil unrest in Yemen for the past 6 months or so, and people are chastising the administration because at one point, maybe a year or so ago, Obama had indicated that it was an example of, one of the countries that was working well. But underneath, there's a lot of stuff going on. And from a military standpoint, yesterday, Saudi Arabia bombed parts of Yemen. And Saudi Arabia has amassed some of their forces at the border of Yemen. The Yemenis, is that a good word, president has left Yemen. There are a couple cities in Yemen. It's a very poor country. They have very limited oil. They are mostly Sunni. The Saudis would like to export their Wahhabi Sunniism down there. Well, let's just stay with the military. One other thing about the military we found out is that, there has been a lot of talk about Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula on and off for the last couple of years. As Rachel pointed out, the underwear bomber got his information from there, even though I do believe he was from Nigeria, and that it is it's smoldering underneath while a lot of other things are going on. So as there are problems in Syria, as there are problems in Iraq, there's the atomic treaty that we're trying to get with Iran. These things have been smoldering underneath in Yemen. And so the Saudis have bombed them. They said that they bombed them without any U.S. assistance on this, even though now U.S. has indicated that they will be assisting them tactically, but not in terms of actually having arms or planes helping out the Saudis in this. We also found out, which I'm sure was available somewhere, but I hadn't heard of it, that there was a base outside of one of the main cities of Yemen that the Americans had been at, and that they left that base recently, probably after the United States had taken everyone from the diplomatic corps out of there, and that what was in Yemen was probably special ops forces with drones, etc., etc. And let's also remember that any of that stuff that was going on in Yemen in terms of what the United States was doing, not only was that approved of by Yemen, but it was probably approved of by Saudi Arabia. Because remember, we had troops in Saudi Arabia, and they got bombed. I know we lost a couple hundred, or 178, something like that. Maybe that was 2000. That was before, and that was one of the big things that Osama bin Laden was pissed about, was that there was troops on Saudi soil. And so we got all of our troops out of Saudi soil, and we put our bases, nearby to help them out, because we want to make sure that oil keeps flowing. And but it'll be interesting to see how much the Saudi contingent, because they say there are other countries along with them, how much they're willing to go into Yemen to get the president back who has fled and get the government back. Now, the subcontext of all of this, that's all the military stuff that's going on. And as I pointed out, there is Al-Qaeda in Yemen. It's been smoldering because other things are going on, but it has been something that has been monitored by the U.S. for a long, long time. And that's why I always say to my friends on the Republican side, the conservative side, the whatever side, the libertarian side, is, you got to keep track of everything that's going on. Because as this instability is going on in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Libya, in Tunisia, in Egypt, Russia's trying to do their thing. China's trying to do their thing. There's a lot of other stuff going on. The United States has to be ever vigilant in all of this stuff. So this Al-Qaeda thing has been known about. It hasn't been something that's been written about, because obviously there are other things that seem to take more importance. But it's important that we keep track of all of this, and that the United States keeps track of all this. They don't have to tell us everything, but they need to keep track of it. Now, in terms of the political aspect of this whole thing, what you have here is like a proxy war. Now, if we break down the politics, and there's a whole lot of names that I can't remember, and I'll probably have to go over those names 100 times before I can remember them, is that there's a number of competing factions in Yemen, and one of them has gotten rid of the other one. The other one was basically more of a Sunni, and the one that got rid of him is basically a Shia. And the Shia one is backed by Iran, and the Sunni one is backed by Saudi Arabia. And remember, Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and they're Wahhabi. Our main portion of that is Wahhabi, and the Iranians are Shia. So we have a little proxy war that's going on in Yemen, and we'll see who comes out. Now, in the context of this whole thing, remember, we have just announced that we are sending planes over to Crete to do air reconnaissance to help the ground forces of Iraq, which I've mentioned before. A portion are Iraqi military, a portion are Iraqi Sunni tribesmen, and the largest portion is Iraqi Shia militias who are trained by a general from the Quds Force, which is the elite forces of Iran, so that they can free to Crete, which is also a Sunni area of Iraq. So a lot of strange things going on in all of that, and but the political aspect of it all, I'm not sure where it's going to fall out. Oil prices went up early today; they've calmed back down a little bit as the time I'm making this statement, but it's not near any strait or any passageway where oil goes through. But a lot of things are going on right now out there, and the United States has to be ever vigilant. Now, as I'm segueing into the next one, I'm going, and this is sort of interesting, is that you had both Rachel and you had both Lawrence bringing their first show, getting about 18 minutes or 16 minutes each into their the main segment of their show on what's going on in Tunisia. Of course, after you do the preliminary plane down in France. But Billy's main portion of his show, not the main portion, but what his segment got into right away was Bo Bergdahl. And this is where I say, this is why when my sisters and brothers are talking about things on the Republican side, they say, hey, look at this crazy motherfucker Bo Bergdahl. We need to put him away forever. Look how bad he is. Look what he did to us. Look at all this, it ruined our name. Etc., etc. Oh, we traded 5 al-Qaeda people. Of course, they're in Qatar. They can't get back to where they are. They're under house arrest. I don't know how many years it is, but my understanding it's a sufficient number of years. And in terms of Bo Bergdahl himself, let me just say, I feel for the gentleman. I can't imagine anyone doing what he did unless he was under a tremendous amount of emotional, spiritual, and possibly mental stress. That doesn't justify or excuse any of the actions that he did, and he will have his time in a court. And let's just bring up a couple other, but look at what my Republicans are saying is, look at this over here. Look how important this is about Bo, and that's not what's important. That's not what's important at all. Now the next thing that's going on over there is that we have, how do I want to put it, a thing in the United States where Obama has asked for war authorizations, let's just say, on the Arabian Peninsula, in that area of the world. They say they can do it. They want Congress to get behind it. Congress doesn't want to get behind it, especially the Republicans, because the Republicans will be able to say that if it goes bad, we never wanted this to happen in the first place. But if it goes good, they can say, oh, we were behind them the entire time. So what else is going on here is there's about $40 billion in appropriations to the Pentagon in terms of military expenditures that they want to have. The Republicans want to have off budget or offline or whatever you want to call it. That basically means we're going to use an extra $40 billion. We're going to pay that extra $40 billion, but it's not going to be part of the deficit, and we're not going to offset it by having any raises in taxes. So implicitly, they want us to do what Obama wants to do in those areas, and they want to pay for it, but they don't want to show it up on the books, because then if they show it up on the books, then they have to cut something else. They're not ready to cut something else, and everything that they've done in terms of cutting is never going to work, but that's what they try. And then the last thing on all of this is that, or part of that budget, is the fact that they want to have twice the number of drones that they had from the previous year, because these drones are all over the place, and they're not they're small machines, and they can pack a powerful punch, but they can break down, and they can break down very easily, so that we want more drones. But at the same time, we don't even know what the United States is doing in some areas of the world unless we hear about a drone that's been dropped somewhere. So let me just synopsize really quickly. Billy wants to talk about Bo, and it's a very tragic thing. He will have to account for himself, but what's really going on is some very terrible stuff in Yemen that needs to be monitored and needs to be watched, and we need to take action if necessary.